Thank you, guys. I mean, ridiculous turnout for an evening like this in the first week of Wimbledon. So, congratulations on your dedication to effectiveness. So this, as some of you will know, is part of an ongoing series that the IPA are hosting, which is as it should be. It's actually my first, but I suspect some of you came last time out to see Chris Hurst and others, there's a few nods, talking about brand fame. And if you were here last time, you'll be familiar with the basic format of the evening. I'm Laurence Green of 101. I'm going to be your chair for the evening, and I get duties and pleasures. My duty is to keep us running to time and to award a bottle of champagne to the best question. So have some. And my pleasure is to introduce a few things. Firstly, tonight's topic, In With the New. Secondly, a short film created by the IPA and Thinkbox, which actually features two of tonight's speakers. So they will be appearing in person and on screen as well. It's like Glastonbury or Wimbledon, Hem and Hill, just less good. And then I'll be introducing the speakers themselves. So those are Simon Harwood from PhD, who's going to be talking to us about launching a new product for McCain. Phil Springle from Karcher, which I'm told is the acceptable anglicisation of what is really Gerge. The guys who brought us the pressure washer, for which men are especially grateful. Number one boys' toy, not just in my house, I'm told by Phil. Lastly, we're going to hear from Tamsin Jabba from Droga 5. They're going to speak for 10 minutes about a chosen case study, and then we're going to sit as a panel to knock a few things around and to take your questions. So, my first task is to introduce the topic. Probably one of the most enduring in the marketing and advertising calendar, happily, because it keeps budgets flowing. The role of communications in securing success for new products, which is a moment where even the most skeptical finance director sort of grudgingly says, yeah, probably, need to give it a shot. And I think it's actually a corner of the canvas that really warrants this sort of scrutiny and this sort of deep dive, partly because it is critically important to so many organisations that they innovate to grow top or bottom line, ideally both. You'll work with some businesses that are betting on innovation. I certainly do. So that's point one. Secondly, I think it's worth investigating because NPD or NBD, new brand development, is actually famously risky. We're going to talk a little bit about that later on. And one way of de-risking NPD is to launch things brilliantly and effectively. I think the other reason, though, for dwelling on it and for sort of generalising away from launching new products is, if you think about it, it's a moment where we're unapologetically trying to change a market or to try and change behaviour. And that's unlike most ongoing campaigning where, whisper it quietly, we're actually trying to keep the status quo just as it is. We're trying to create habit, we're trying to stop people changing and deserting our brands. Whereas when we are introducing new products and new brands, we're determined to change things. So I think there's hopefully a lot of generalisable knowledge here. But in short, when we advertise a new product, the whole organisation is often watching, quite scary. The dice are loaded against us because most of them fail, also quite scary. We've got to disrupt things rather than just accept how they are. And we've got to get it right first time because you don't get another go. I know someone amongst us will touch on that later. So it is not a job for the squeamish. That said, if you get it right, you're a hero because you've opened up a new revenue stream, you've maybe created a new brand or galvanised a parent, and you've most likely paved the way for future innovation. So there is a lot at stake. And best of all, if you are lucky enough to work on a new product launch, you get to write a relatively open and shut IPA effectiveness case, because pre and post look very different, which isn't always the case, as we know. Again, whisper it quietly. Sales before, none. Sales after, some. Year on year increase, infinity %. You might need to work a little bit harder than that to get an award. But there's normally a pretty clear difference between life before new product and life after. And as a result, the IPA data bank is full of new product launch success stories, which those of you who investigate it will know, everything from Dave to Dove, and that's just the D's. So look at those in your own time. I was also asked though by the organisers to declare my own hand in all of this, because my effectiveness claims to fame, I suppose, correlate very closely with new product moments. So whether it was brand or advertising or product, I suppose is for debate. But when I was at Fallon, we won a gold for the launch of the Fabia for Skoda back in the day, using a new model to completely change perceptions of a mark, which again is something we're going to come back to. We won silver for the relaunch of Cadbury's Wispa, almost entirely in social media, one of the earliest and I think still best examples of doing so. If Sony had let us, we'd have won a gold for the launch of Bravia, the Sony Balls commercial, because they had to take the ad off air and build another factory. So I think we could have just asked for an award with one sentence, but they wouldn't let us, being famously secretive. And similarly, in my time at 101, we've actually won a silver for launching a thing called the National Art Pass, which changed the art fund from a struggling charity into a pretty successful retailer. So you can, the delta and the degree of change that those of you sitting on new product briefs or stories can execute or report is really, really massive. And for some reason, in my new guys, as well as founder of a little independent agency, we get handed a lot of launch briefs. They obviously think we're thoroughly responsible people, so we've just launched Netto, which is Sainsbury's rival for Aldi and Lidl's business, and we've just launched the new Corsa for Vauxhall. And in fact, keep your eyes peeled for a nice little tactical ad for Vauxhall in the morning, because of course they sponsor Home Nations football and the women are showing the men how to do it. So we've got quite a little perky tactical piece tomorrow. Why do I go through that? Well, even that personal roll call, as I sort of work through some of the stuff I've done and been awarded for, shows, I think, how much the success of new products relies on really good thinking, not just great execution. Again, that'll be underscored in our presentations tonight. And if you think about it, even a kind of poorly positioned incumbent has kind of got squatters' rights in a market. They can probably get away with it because they've got trade support or history. But if you're a poorly positioned entrant, or if you haven't thought yourself or thought your launch through properly, you are not going to make the dent that you promised your business. So that's observation one, good thinking rather than just great execution. Observation two is often how much work the advertising, the agency, the brand team need to do in the organisation, not just against the consumer. I suspect, again, that'll be echoed later on. So, I think I'm right in saying there were 4 winning new product entries in last year's awards. We're going to see a short film very shortly, speaking to some of those. But tonight we're going to have a deep dive on a couple of those, as well as enjoy an alternative perspective from afar. We've got 3 great speakers, a media man, a marketing manager, and a creative strategist. We're breaking with convention and starting with the media man, breaking with creative agency convention, putting media on first. So after we've seen this short film, Simon Harwood is going to be speaking to us. I'm going to call it his title because it's the best one, Head of Futures at PhD. And he's going to be talking to us about ready-baked jackets. Phil from Karcher actually wrote his paper, I learned today, rather than asking his agency to do it. It's to be doubly applauded. I also found out today that you actually sold some window vacs by writing the paper. A couple of people just read the paper, went out and bought them. So maybe cut back on the above the line spend and get that case study trending. And lastly, we're going to hear from Tamsin Jabba, whose agency have just picked up no less than a cyber lion for the launch of Under Armour. It's a very different kind of launch because they were basically obliged to create space for some new products to flourish rather than talk about the new products themselves. So hopefully you're going to get a blend of opinions, as I say, after this short film.